Hello everyone. I apologize profusely. That was me. I was listening to the class and my phone was on the chair and then I just picked it up without looking at it. I probably tapped end the class. So which is my fault. I apologize to the 15th cohort. That was me. Was totally in error and I had already pressed it. I couldn't stop it. I was trying to pick up my phone.
No
So I'm
problem.
sorry everyone. I apologize fully. That was me.
That's fine. Thank you.
I'm very sorry. Yeah.
No problem. Okay, so can we have the slides back on?
Yeah, maybe you just give them like a minute or two for them to come, for everybody to come back. Though we have like 32 already. I apologize fully. This was my fault. I wouldn't be touching my phone again.
No problem.
Okay. Well
Okay.
done, Uchechi. Wow, you as usual do not ever disappoint me. I'm even learning here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Edie. Okay, so back to the rights. So I was before we had a brief interruption, I was stating that the mere fact that you are a Nigerian citizen means that you have rights that are specific to you, that perhaps someone in Uganda or even in the US will not enjoy because they're not Nigerian citizens, right? So rights are local to a jurisdiction, right? So if you leave this jurisdiction and you go into another jurisdiction, you cannot apply the rights that you held in the previous jurisdiction. So it's important to know what rights apply to you as a Nigerian citizen. I mean, there are people, some of us that are probably entering our 50s and 60s and 70s, and we really do not know our rights. I know there was a conversation I was having with a friend over the weekend that just passed, and he was telling me about how an airline had canceled his flight without prior notice while he was in the airport. They just canceled his flight, and he was just sulking about it. I was like, do you not know that you actually have rights? There's a whole aviation regulation, that's aviation act, that actually covers your rights as a traveler, and you should seek remedy for these, for such an airline, refrigerator. So there's that issue of people not even knowing what applies to them as citizens, right? So it's important, like platforms like this are important for us to awaken our knowledge, because it's just like that saying that people die without even knowing what accrues to them as citizens of Nigeria. People just are not aware. And a lot of times when you see some arguments online, you see some back and forths online, you just know that these people, they probably do not know where one thing starts and one thing stops. They don't know what powers or what rights are within a particular legal system. Say, for instance, the legislative. They don't know what the legislative is there for. They don't know what the executive. So you see people confusing the powers of the legislative for the powers of the executive, or the powers of the executive for the powers of the judiciary. So it's very important to be informed. The more informed you are, the more intelligent your arguments are, the more factual the basis for your arguments are. So I'll just take a pause here just to hear from you guys. I hope I haven't lost anyone. So far, what are your thoughts about the rule of law in Nigeria. What are your thoughts about the application of the rule of law in Nigeria? Do you think we've gotten it right? Do you think that we have we're close to the mark? Or do you think we're totally off the mark in comparison with other societies, other legal systems in Africa even? What do you think about our application of the rule of law in Nigeria? Anybody can unmute. Anybody can unmute. I saw a namesake here, Stella Uchichi. That's interesting. Hi, Stella. Okay, so anybody, rule of law, what are your thoughts? Are we totally off the mark, or what do you think? Okay. All right. Titi Layo. Or Moriam. The two hands up. Can we unmute the two people? Ask them to speak. Can we unmute the two people that want to speak?
Hello, good evening, madam.
Good evening.
Yeah, I'm Titilayo Adeshina. About the rule of law, the only thing that I want to say is about the application of the rule of law. That is the law binding and is is it being practiced, or let me say that is it being being judged with the people as I mean with the citizen. That's the only issue that I have. I know that in Nigeria that we have rule of law, which is I know that to some extent is actually working, but the only issue is the equality and how the law is being used or is binding on every citizen of the country. That's my point, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Titilayo. And I would agree with you actually. I mean, we can cite several cases of there being an inequality. But again, to your point as well, we do have, you can tell that there exists the rule of law in this society. It's not an arbitrary society. It's also not a dictatorship by any stretch. It is also not a theocratical government. You know, there's clear separation of powers. The extent at which those powers are independent can be argued. But we know that there is a clear system of democracy in Nigeria. It's just the degree at which it is being implemented. So we'll just take two more, Moriam, and then we have Osage.
Good evening once again, ma. As earlier stated by the person that's Titilayo, I believe we have clearly stated rule of law in Nigeria. The problem is with the application. I believe that it has been hindered by a lot of things. Maybe our weak institutions, they were not able to enforce them or implement them very well, and maybe corruption sometimes, because sometimes we say that the rule of law makes everybody equal under the law and is applicable to everybody, but due to all those things, it kind of, separates it for some people in a way. So that's my opinion. We have a rule of law. We are just not working effectively to make it work.
Well said. Well said. Thank you. Thanks for that. So we lastly, let's take Osage.
All right, thank you very much. And appreciate everyone who have one way or the other contributed. So mine is just an extension, and it comes in form of a question, right? I mean, from the onset of this class, I now know that rule of law is like a frame that binds everybody together, and of course, within a space, just like a facilitator said. So I want to ask, why are certain political figures or certain political personalities in Nigeria immune within the time frame that they're in office? Because if we are saying that it binds on everybody, including political officers, then what is the essence of immunity? Thank you.
Okay, Meshach, I was expecting someone like you to have a question like this. Well, yeah, I mean, um, at the very basics of the question, I would say that the rule of law obviously is guided by a body of laws, right? So it's the provision of the Constitution that we all agree to. I mean, the first statement in the Constitution says we the people, right? So it's taking that this is what we have agreed to be bound by, which is the Nigerian Constitution. And in that Constitution, there are provisions for immunity for some public officers. Whether that's a fair provision or not, it's left to be argued. But that's, if it's contained in the body of law, then that's what will be applicable. Yeah, I agree with you that some people are, perhaps by virtue of their office, there's looked at as being more favored than others. But then, that some, again, talking about rights are not absolute, right? There are limitations to some rights. And I believe it was someone who said rights apply to everybody. And I stated that some rights are the exclusive reserve of some class of people, right? So there are definitely dissimilarities with the application or the provisions of rights. There are rights that apply to everybody. For instance, fundamental human rights. There are rights that apply by virtue of your office. There are rights that apply by virtue of your position, right? So there are different disparities. Now, if you want to argue about its fairness or its arbitrariness, then that's another thing. But as long as it is codified in the Constitution, until that provision is repealed or amended or, removed, then we're all bound by it, essentially. But yes, I know that there's some provisions that are a bit off. I mean, there are probably reasons for it. Say, for instance, I mean, some argue that if someone has served the country, served in quotes, maybe they should enjoy some kind of time off or some kind of immunity, but hey, that's also another argument that can be had. All right, so thanks everyone. I mean, very, very great feedback. So I'm very confident that we have a very good idea of what the rule of law is, and even a feel of how it's applied in Nigeria. I was maybe a little bit scared that someone, I mean, I've been in one class and someone was just like, we don't have the rule of law. There's nothing like rule of law, the judiciary is not separate from the executive or whatever. So that means everything. I'm like, to be honest, Nigeria, I know we may seem quite abysmal, but we're not as bad as we like to think we are. For to an extent, we actually do apply these principles. To an extent, we actually do have a fair policy across board. But again, the degree at which we've applied them obviously needs a lot of work. Someone had pointed out about corruption and incompetence, and people just being very selfish about how they go about things. And I agree, definitely. I would say this, Edie also likes to say this, if we applied parts of the Constitution as is, would go a long way if we actually applied the Constitution as is, as we have a good body of laws. Just the applicability of it is the way that we implement it that actually is a problem. It's not really that our laws they don't have provisions for these things. They do have provisions for these things, but it's just that the application of it is where we have issues with. But yeah, so thank you, everyone. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so this is the legal framework for our rights as Nigerian citizens. Obviously, we have the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which is the great grandfather, the source of all laws. In law school, we used to call it the grand norm. That's where every other law finds its viability, finds its purpose, finds its roots. So if any law is clashing or does not align with the principles of the Constitution, then that area of clash, that area of conflict will be either void or voidable to the extent of its conflict, right? So yes, we have the Constitution, and obviously we have the Chapter 4 of the Constitution that deals with the fundamental human rights of every citizen of Nigeria. Because we're dealing with the civic and political rights, we have the Electoral Act, the INEC regulations and guidelines for the conduct of elections, and then we have other human rights bodies, other international laws that we have ratified into our laws, so we can definitely glean from. For instance, we have the Child Rights Act and some. Okay, so you can go on to the next slide. So we have some laws that we've codified. It's a bit tiny here. So we have laws that deal with the economic and social cultural rights that we have ratified. Some we have not ratified yet. We have some conventions from the AU. We have some on women and political participation, discrimination against women, inhuman, degrading treatment, and all of these things. So we can just move on to the next slide. So a lot of times we refer, especially if you have a case in court, a lot of times lawyers refer to these ratified laws just to strengthen your case. Because if you ratify a law into your body of laws, that means that you're subjecting yourself to the principles of those provisions, right? So we have the civil and political rights in Nigeria. So these are a class of rights that protect our individual freedom from infringement by government, social organizations, and private individuals. So the civil and political rights, they ensure that our participation in the government, ensure that we are protected in terms of our freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of participation as well. So obviously, these rights have limits. They have limitations. Again, I'll say that again and again. They have limitations. They are not absolute. They're definitely, for instance, if you talk about your right to life, I mean, say that Section 33 says that I have a right to live. So, as a human being, that right is protected. But if you commit a crime, you would be, there are some sanctions that are up to, taking life for life. There's also the self-defense as well. So is there any excuse for taking a life? If you say, if someone comes to attack you and then you defend yourself, in the court of law, that's actually a valid defense. Self-defense is a valid defense. If you're defending your property, or in the process of a lawful arrest, say for instance, if the police has a warrant for an arrest of a defaulter or a felon, someone who has committed a felony, right? And the person tries to run away or tries to escape. If a death occurs in that instance, then that is a limitation to the person's right to life. There's also when, for instance, a mutiny or an insurrection, if that's taking place, then your right to life is a bit limited. Obviously, and we have like the dignity of a human person, not to be held against your will, not to be tortured, that right can also be suspended, because if there is an arrest, right, if you're taking into custody, obviously your right has been suspended in that instance. If there is an emergency situation in any space, if the government calls for a state of emergency, you can no longer loiter or move around, right? Even NYSC is an infringement on your rights, right? Because it's not an infringement, it's a suspension of your rights. Because you can say, I have the right to do anything or go anywhere when I'm done with school, but obviously that's a mandatory requirement by the government that every person who has graduated from a Nigerian university, or every Nigerian citizen, must go through this process. So that's obviously a right that has been placed upon you. And even when you're participating in the NYSC process, there's a mandatory uniform that you have to wear, the mandatory exercises. So all of these things are sort of like, there's sort of like limits to the rights that you have, and so on and so forth. So we're just going to look at the civil and political rights. So you have the right to vote in an election, as long as you're of age, you're 18 and above, you have the right to participate and vote in an election. I mean, in the previous election, we had a lot of cases where people had voiced out that they were being discriminated upon, when they were trying to vote. Obviously, that was absolutely wrong. Every citizen in Nigeria has the absolute right to vote, and you have a right to join a political party. You have a right to run for office. You have a right to participate freely in political rallies, events, or even protests as well. There are different kinds of rules and laws that support these rights as well. So we're just going to look at the next slide now. Okay, so just a definition on civil rights. So this includes ensuring people's physical and mental integrity, life and safety, protection from discrimination on grounds such as race, gender, national origin, color, sexual orientation, ethnicity, religion, or disability, and individual rights such as privacy, freedom of thought, conscience, speech, expression, religion, the press, assembly, and movement. So obviously, these are things that affect your participation in a government, right? So if you are a girl, for instance, or a man, for instance, not be discriminated upon and maybe say you cannot run for office because you're a lady, that's our laws do not provide for that. Our laws obviously and expressly gives us the right to participate in government. And also your skin color or maybe your ethnicity, all of those things are not a part of our law. So obviously you have the right to do all of these things. So let's just go to the next slide. Okay, so political rights. Okay, so you can just take the both together. All right, so the political rights also includes the rights of fair hearing, actually. Fair hearing, fair trial, due process, the right to seek redress or legal remedy. And that's one thing that people often shy away from, seeking legal remedy. I don't know why Nigerians are so desensitized from seeking legal remedy. It's quite sad, actually, because I guess it's the relationship the judiciary has with the citizens. I know in other climes they have things like small claims courts where the process is not that cumbersome. You can even just apply online and your case is heard. So there's a very the judiciary and the citizens almost have a good rapport in essence. So in Nigeria, in essence, that it's as if there's this arm's length relationship that the judiciary has with the people. So I'd actually like to hear from you guys here. Would seeking legal remedy, and by legal remedy, I mean either litigation or the multi-door courts, The multi-door courts are the alternative to litigation. So maybe arbitration, mediation, conciliation, and things like that, but seeking it in a more formal way. Would you be likely to seek redress to an infringement on your rights, or maybe even a contractual breach? Would you be likely to seek legal remedy formally? And why, if you would, and why if you would not? I'd just like to hear from 3 or 4 people. Why do you think that Nigerians are so desensitized to? Oh wow, someone said something on the chat. It will. I don't write legal terms for this lecture, Taya. Why? Why, Meshach? Please, if there's something I have said that is not clear, please just let me know. Sorry about that. Okay, Titilayo. Titilayo, you can unmute and speak. Oh, okay, legal remedy. Legal remedy is, for instance, you you have a right, obviously, you have a right to freedom of movement, and then maybe you go out of your house and then someone comes and harasses you, or maybe let me take it in the more formal term. You enter into a contract with someone to provide a service for you, and then the person doesn't pay you. Meanwhile, you've contracted that after you've done this thing for the person, you're going to get paid. So legal remedy is seeking legal resort for that infringement of your rights. So would you be willing to go to courts or go to the multi-door courts to seek remedy, to seek a restitution, like to seek help or to seek how do I put it? To seek like support. Make it English. To seek a resolution. Yes, to seek a resolution. Would you like, if someone like does something against you, or you have an issue with someone, like a formal issue, maybe not really friend to friend, maybe you actually have a contract, or you're working somewhere and they do something against you that is unfair or that is obviously wrong. Is your first thought, I'm going to go to court, I'm going to seek a resolution for this thing in court? If it is, why? If it is not, why not? Titilayo, I think she's trying to unmute. And Moria.
Hello,
Okay.
Madam Uchechi, can you hear me, ma?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
In the issue of, yes, ma, in the issue of seeking redress in court of law, I can say that one of the major things that discourages people is the issue of the issue of timing, the adjournment, postponement of the adjourning, and the issue of even getting a lawyer. You know, so people always in my locality, they always thought that they're going to pay through their noses just to get that. But now, this is what I know that people are not doing now. People prefer to go for I thought you call it multi-door court. That's ADR, alternative dispute resolution. That's what I know that people are going for. But let me say that the awareness is not that much in this part of the country that I am. I'm based in Ibadan. The awareness on the ADR, the multi-door courts, you know, I thought that I think that the judiciary have to do a kind of enlightenment, yes, enlightenment for people to know that there's some alternative instead of for you to seek redress in court of law. And I wanted to say something. I hope I've not forgotten. So I'm thinking of the issue of the adjournment, as I said earlier. People that, if you go to court now, they are adjourned and postponement, come back next time. You know, those issues. there's kind of discouragement to people, especially people that are based in the rural area, for them to move from their locality down to where they know that the court is. And I'm Yoruba. They believe that anti-court to Bokashore, that you cannot go back from court and become and still remain friends, is one of the issues that I think that is affecting the application and the people seeking regress in the court of law. That's my opinion, madam.
Thank you, Titilayo. I mean, I think that's very well spoken. I can identify with that actually, and it's quite unfortunate that that's the relationship that people have with the judiciary. And I would say that even as a lawyer, because I remember when I was still like when I was yet to be court, when I was doing my externship as a lawyer, is a thing we do in law school where you have to go off and like intern in a law firm. The majority of cases, because I did my internship in Uyo, Akwa Ibom State, the majority of people who were in court were actually older people, like aged people. And there were lots of land matters. And these people knew to come to court to seek redress for these things. And I mean, you can argue that this was probably their last resort, and they probably fought about it and even killed one or two people before they finally landed there. But the vast majority of cases that I was privy to was actually from very much older people, right? Like aged people, they will come with their walking stick, they'll come and sit in court, and so they had the awareness that, you know what, courts, no matter how long it took, I'm going to get my justice. You know, there was that. I feel like the older generation, they're a lot more sensitized towards the legal system. I don't know why. And thank you for bringing up the multi-door court, because I think that a lot of people do not know the vast benefits of the multi-door court system. Not only is it cheaper, is a lot faster, and it's less formal. It's less formal because the point where you said about, you know, people no longer being friends after they've taken each other to court, it actually tries to have a more friendly approach towards resolution. Obviously, you can't take crime, you can't take criminal cases to the multi-door court. No, it would have to be a civil suit or maybe a family matter, right? But I would really encourage everyone here. I mean, knowing this now, I think you should take it back home, that let people be more aware of the multi-door court. It's actually really good. I have taken clients to the multi-door courts, gone through mediation, we've gone through arbitration, and I can tell you for a fact that it is less rigorous. It's a lot faster and it is less rigorous, and there are a lot of trained people who, you know, sit and mediate upon these things, and a lot of times people come out better, and it's a lot more what's the word, private. There's a lot of privacy to it, you know, and it's actually very enforceable as well. Once you agree on the terms after the process, you can actually take that agreement to the judge and say, you know what, this is what we agreed on, and we want you to seal it as what will bind both of us. So again, these are your rights. These systems, they exist for you and me. They're actually serving us. So the fact that we shy away from these things is actually quite sad, you know, because these things are there. People go to school to be able to be participate in these things. So we should actually take advantage of them. And one thing I wanted to also say is that we have so many lawyers. Year in, year out, the Nigerian law school churns out lawyers. I feel like everybody here should know at least 2 or 3 lawyers in your contacts. You should have at least 2 or 3 lawyers. One thing I would advise the people that I know, my friends, people that are around me, have at least 1 lawyer as a friend. Have at least 1 lawyer as a friend. So that when you need a legal assistance, you should at least easily be able to ask someone 1 or 2 questions, you know, seek help, quick, urgent. Oh, please, could you just help me look through this contract? Is it even okay to do enter into this contract is very, very important. Very, very important. I think more than 60% of issues that people enter into, they would not have entered into if they at least had legal advice before entering into it. So it's very important to have a lawyer as a friend. There are so many lawyers these days. Like everywhere you turn, there's a lawyer. I'm like, at this point, lawyers are everywhere. Nigerian law school churns out 3,000. I think by now it should be 8,000 lawyers every year. So yeah, I would say that to your point. Okay, there are a couple of other answers, but I think that was all. Okay, someone said some people will just shun and use the term God will judge. Exactly. I feel like, honestly, I feel like things like that just shows a sign of lack of awareness. You don't know your rights. You don't know what's applicable to you. You don't know what's available to you. And it's very sad. Some of these things are not even as expensive as we think they are. We just need to find out, we just need to find out. Write a letter. Just start the process. You'll be surprised how these things go. Someone had told me a story about how I think the person's mother's vehicle, the driver she had hired just took the vehicle and ran away, and they reported to the police, and they just started praying about it because they just felt like, you know what, nothing will happen. But she said one day someone called her from, I think, a VIO office where they do what they call it, car plates. So apparently the driver had gone there to go and change the car plate, and the person who was at work checked the system and saw that this person that owns this car plate is not the same person that's coming to change it. Let me put a call across to the person and find out if she has approved. So like sometimes the systems actually work. We just have so much bad faith in them that we don't even try. And with that call, the woman was like, please cease whatever thing is going on. Immediately they sent the information to the checkpoints. And that was how she was able to find her car. He was stopped at a checkpoint. They received the information and he was stopped at the checkpoint, and she recovered her car, and the man is currently in custody. I know that we've lost so much faith in our systems, but you will be surprised, having started a process, you'll be surprised how far it will go. There's still, I believe that largely the system actually still works. It's just like someone had mentioned, a lot of corruption, a lot of corrupt practices, a lot of incompetence, right? But I would encourage everyone, especially when it comes to seeking legal redress for wrong done to you, try the multi-dockets. Litigation might, especially if you want to still maintain the relationship that you have with the person, or maybe the infringement is not irreparable, right? Try the multi-docket house. There are actually very qualified people that are there. Very, very qualified people that are there. They do it very professionally. They take their time and they do a good work. So yeah, I would encourage everyone to do that. Okay. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so we'll just take a look at the citizens' rights as provided in the Constitution. So there are lots of questions before we even go into. There are lots of questions that I'm sure a couple of people will have on their minds. Are these rights even respected in Nigeria? Does the justice system even have the will to treat the issues of human rights without fear or favor? Does the country have a strong framework to tackle and grapple with human rights abuse? Does the Nigerian government know what the human rights and tenets of democracy are? So these are some of the questions that a lot of people have. But first, let's even have a look at these rights. What are they? How far do they go? And yeah, let's inform ourselves. So let's go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so First is the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This is contained in section 38. We have the right to think freely, to harbor our own opinions about the government or systems or structures. We have a right to freedom of opinion. We have a right to practice or participate in any political ideology that aligns with our values. There was a lot that happened. I think last election really exposed a lot about where we are with our understanding of rights. Sometimes people want to mistake legal rights with moral rights, which there's a very fine line between morality and legality. People almost bully other people into accepting what they think is right. I think it's important to have healthy conversations, healthy debates. If you're able to convince another person otherwise, fine, good and fine. But if not, I think we should have that mindset of respect, respectability, and respecting people's rights to hold on to their thoughts and conscience to the best of their ability. It's important to educate people, to speak wisely and intelligently, but you shouldn't bother on like disrespecting people, calling people out of their names, talking down on people. People have their reasons. I know someone who is very educated and but his political views, they're actually quite scary. But he would explain himself. He told, this is why I believe what I believe. This is why. It's on him. I can't now start being like, oh, you're such a horrible person. We need to be able to respect people's rights when it comes to their freedom of opinion, the practicing of their political ideas, as long as it does not infringe on your own rights. Everyone is free to do that. All right, so let's move on to the next. I have a code. Let's move on to the next. Okay, freedom of expression and the press. So this involves freedom to comment and criticize. Yes, freedom to hold opinions without interference, freedom to express and disseminate opinions, even using your social media. You have the right to do that. However, this right obviously is not absolute, right? So you cannot hide under freedom of expression and abuse people in power, right? You cannot hide under that's freedom of expression to maybe start a tyranny. That's obviously a fellow, that's a grave crime that can get you arrested, right? So obviously these rights are not absolute. You cannot say, oh, because I have freedom of expression, I can defame the government and maybe say what they haven't done or things like that. Have intelligent conversations, put on criticism. That's even the work of the opposition. And I feel like a lot of times we start and end our political journey on the election day. Even after the election, as an opposition party, you still have the work of putting up a good criticism for the government, following them up with their policies. What did they say they would do? Have they done it? Put up write-ups, have conversations, have Twitter spaces, participate in those Twitter spaces. If you ever see forums where these personalities are being questioned or being interviewed, write in, send your questions, be part of the conversation. It's always a continual thing. Even the opposition is still part of the government because you're there applying pressure. Literally, you're supposed to be applying pressure. You shouldn't just let it be. And I think I think we're getting it done gradually, but unfortunately, it's when we're suffering, that's when we've all of a sudden woken up to the fact that we can actually still criticize the government and apply pressure and demand to be addressed, you know. But it's not until like we're literally suffering and there's fuel crisis and we're like, oh, help us, we're we should actually have a healthy political participation with the incumbent government, healthy debates, healthy back and forth. It's very important. As much as possible, keep it decent, respectful, but you're a good monitor. You're supposed to act as a good mirror, a good monitoring system. Social media is such a beautiful tool, but I feel like the fact that we are not informed intellectually, we don't have the right knowledge or education about things. Sometimes we just talk amiss. We just have so much opinions and we're unable to put ourselves together to actually present our case in a very orderly manner. So yes, we have a right to participate by virtue of the press, express ourselves, but again, do it in an orderly fashion, a respectful fashion, not giving libelous claims or defaming people's characters that could actually lead to a lawsuit, right? So let's move on to the next. Yes, so have a right to freedom or a peaceful assembly and association, and this entails associating freely with other people, participating in political rallies, bringing people together, even protests as well, right? Even belonging to a trade union. We know the ASU, the NASU, what do they call them? The National Labour Party, the Labour Union, sorry, the Labour Union, NLC. So these are bodies that are actually codified. They're legal bodies, but you could actually also put up yours as well, associate freely with people. But again, these rights are also limited. You cannot say because you have a right to peaceful assembly, you then assemble on the main road, express road, where other people need to commute. You cannot assemble and then start vandalizing property or causing nuisance. You cannot assemble in people's private households, because now you're infringing on other people's rights. So again, you have the right to do it, but within the confines of the law. And again, I believe there's a law for if you want to have a peaceful protest, you should actually obtain clearance from the police. So it's important to just be aware of these things, just so that when you're called to book, you ensure that you have all your to do checked, right? So if it was that you should have gotten clearance, just make sure that you get the clearance, have a space where and inform the people that you're participating in the protest with that, don't do this, make sure there's room for other people to pass, because as well, other people need to get to their own venues and all of these things. It's when it gets haywire, that's when the police starts coming in legally, really, because they are there to protect lives and property. So we all obviously need to express our rights within the confines of the law. Okay, let's go to the next. All right, so we, again, right to freedom of movement. You have a right to move even outside of Nigeria, return, move freely throughout Nigeria, any state of the Federation. We will reside at any part of the country and not be expelled or refused entry, obviously. There are systems to it, there are processes to it. You cannot just enter a flight and fly out. You obviously have to get a visa. You have to ensure that your Nigerian passport is up to date and all of these things. So yes, you have a right to freedom of movement. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, freedom from discrimination. I think that's also very self-explanatory. You should not be discriminated by virtue of your gender, your age, your race, your class, and all of those things. So you have a right to participate in the political climate, irrespective of any of this. As long as you're a Nigerian citizen, that right accrues to you. Yeah, right to acquire immovable property. We have a right to, sorry, privacy in your home. You have a right, for your property to be respected, your family life, your home and communication, But sometimes people willingly submit these rights to other people, maybe by virtue of where they work. I know some offices actually tap into people's conversations for trading purposes. Some messages some calls are recorded, right? So obviously the Data Protection Act states that the person who is collecting your data must make it aware to you. You should be aware that your data is actually collected, and the purpose for which it is collected must be stated, right? If not, you can actually report people, they collect your data arbitrarily or illegally. They do not have a right to that. I think it was recently that Fidelity Bank or so was fined over 500 million by the Data Protection Agency. And yeah, so things like this are actually enforceable to an extent. Next. Okay, so very quickly, the INEC regulations and guidelines for conduct of election also provides us with a couple of rights that pertain to our electoral participation. So we have the right to register and vote. We have a right to vote and be voted for when registered. Obviously, you have to go by the rules and regulations. You have to be of an age, a certain age. You have to have gotten some requirements that is also stated there in the law. We also have a right to recall an elected representative. This is something that we've spoken quite at length about. So, for instance, if you've elected someone into office, or as a representative, a senator, or someone in the House of Assembly, and the person is not performing as you wish that they would, or is not doing as much as you expected, the people that actually voted them in can come back together with a referendum and demand that he should come out. But the process is quite rigorous, because again, you have to get details of everyone who participated in that election. I think it's about 2/3. I'm not sure if Edie is still here. He can speak on that. But yes, that is a process that should actually, we should be aware of. You have a right to secrecy when you're voting. That's why you always have that private box, right? Because your vote is your choice. It's personal to you. You don't have to tell anybody who you voted for. So that's your right. And you can vote for whoever you want to because you want to. You have a right to attend rallies. We already talked about that, freedom of participation, and right to information about elections. So information about election cannot be secret. That's why INEC would post it out, advertise it. It has to be known by everyone in that jurisdiction that, listen, the voting starts on 9 a.m. You should come here. This is your voting booth. All of this information should be public. It should not be sold. It should not be exclusive to set. It be public. So that's your right to the information. All right, next slide. All right, so we've come to the end of our class. I hope I haven't lost anyone. So in conclusion, the Nigerian Constitution outlines in its provisions basic fundamental human rights that you can actually carry on to different conversations, different areas of the system, right? The problem is not that the problem actually is not that we don't have the law. The law is there. Our rule books are actually good as they are. Because a lot of times people talk about, oh, we need to remove the constitution, we need to do. That's not the problem. The constitution is fine as it is. If we even practice half of what was in the constitution, we'll go a long way. But the problem now comes with the implementation of what is in the constitution. Do the leaders even know what is right? Or is it just a corrupt system? Is a problem of implementation. And for any development to take place, the government should find a way to marry the democracy, rule of law, and human rights, because these things go hand in hand. In a situation where you see that there is something there's something not going well, it's usually a problem of either of these things. The rule of law is not properly applied, or the human rights are overlooked or underestimated. they're not of value in that society. That's usually a problem. Whenever there's a problem with a democratic government, is not as important to that society. Either there's no proper separation of powers, or the judiciary is not properly independent, or there are no checks and balances, right? Or the human rights are just not taken into consideration. And I've said largely in Nigeria, human rights, there's a lot we can do with human rights in Nigeria, right? Especially when you think about other systems of government, other jurisdictions, where you just know that you will get redress. Like, someone cannot just come and do, like, even online, we see it in the US, where people, just with one word, the public opinion, already the police goes into action. Even with I don't know if you guys saw the man who was walking his dog, and then, or the lady who was walking with his dog, and the man was a bird watcher, and the white lady was trying to talk down on him, and he recorded it. Immediately, news stations picked it up, and before you know it, the woman was, she had to resign from her job, or she was sacked from her job, because they don't tolerate that kind of attitude. So there's a heavy emphasis on human rights, and everybody is equal. Nobody is more important than the next person. If we had that kind of mindset, and even not just even looking at the government, first of all, looking at our day-to-day interactions, if we had that kind of mindset that people's rights on a basic level are important, and we lend our voices to these conversations, and we support people, I feel like we together, we can actually make headway. We can get the government's ears to be alert to these things, because that's what's important to us. Not just the fact that we are benefiting from the government, or whether it benefits us and our family, but if we actually care about the next person, care that the other person's rights is protected. If someone's house is being demolished, you lend your voice. Don't just turn your face and say it doesn't affect you. Support people's human rights. When they are chasing their human rights, lend your voice. Write something. Put up a post. The best that you can do. Educate people in your environment, but do it respectfully, within the confines of the law, intelligently. Actually know what the law provides for before you engage in these conversations. But yeah, I hope this has been a good class. I hope I haven't lost anyone. Thank you so much for your time. I've absolutely enjoyed interacting with everyone here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ma, for that very interesting class. So quickly, we'll go into questions and answers. So if you have any question, please, you can raise your digital hands or put the questions in the chat box. Thank you. Okay, I can't see any question in the chat box or any hands raised. I can say Cheche has done justice to this topic so well, and it's well understood. I myself also learned so much on the rights and how we try to misuse some rights without knowing that we can sue people for not doing the right thing. So that is something very important that we have to take note of. Our rights as citizens of Nigeria or a country. So thank you very much, Ma, for that very interesting presentation.
Thank you. Thanks. Thanks, Chalia. How do you say your name? Chalia. Chalia.
Chalia, yes.
Chalia. So
Yeah.
beautiful. All right.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Didima, is there anything for us?
Thank you so much, Chechi. It's always great having you here. I'm sure the students learned a lot. I could see a lot of comments in the chat box. So we'll just allow them on mute and tell you thank you themselves, and then we'll call it an evening.
Thank you,
Thank
Ma.
you very much, Ma.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
very much,
man.
Ma.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so
Ma.
much.
Thank you very much. We are so much excited.
Thank you so much, man.
Thank you very much, Ma. The session was very, very
All right, thank you, everyone. Well done, Chalia. We'll see you tomorrow in class. Good night.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks.